Yeah. Oh, I love your HR shirts. Yes. So neat. Oh, I love, yeah. I have to say, I'm a fan of having like clothes that are.
I'll tell you what though, I won't go out in public. When I was at the workforce center.
Why? Because people will approach
The
you.
workforce center is way worse because if you have something that says Pikes Peak Workforce Center, what happens is you get people that come up like, "Can you find me a job?"
Oh
And it's
yeah,
like,
that's not
"Please
cool.
don't." And so like the HR one, yeah, I just don't wear out because people have such a negative view of like HR.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, we're probably one of the funnest groups.
I didn't think about that. That would be kind of rough.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
People think that HR is bad.
I'm gonna kind of tuck it under here first.
Right. Well, in theory, but I don't know.
But I just like having that because I was in the military, and that's the one thing I miss about it was having a uniform.
Yeah.
They wear the same thing every day.
Oh, well, that
That-
makes it.
It
that
saved.
makes it easy to pick. We
Oh
don't
my
wear it
God,
every day.
I missed that. I was like, oh yeah, what am I gonna wear today? The same thing.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it was for me when I went to a school that,
A boarding school, right?
Yeah. And so just like, yeah, same thing every day.
Yeah.
It was nice because then when I came to the States, I'm like, what's cool to wear? Like, what do I wear?
It's hard for me.
Yeah.
Like, I bought a shirt that my cousin had just so that
Well,
I
and
was like, oh, wait, maybe this is cool.
I went to a Catholic grade school. Same deal.
Yeah, right.
It's
yeah.
like, nope, it's only wear the same thing every day.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So,
Wait, is this my mark right here?
as you can assume, toes at that point. So, yep. Perfect.
And I can sit over here and not be seen, right?
Welcome. I'm so excited.
And then I think last time.
Wait, I was so easy to read it off the teleprompter last time. Are we gonna do that again?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
good.
trying to figure out-
Because that was why Blaze do that.
I was trying to remember how we did it last time. As far as, did you have like a clicker to click through the slideshow?
The TriCaster does the form. So,
Yeah, I didn't do anything. I thought.
Yeah. You
Okay.
just
I just read.
Yep.
What
Exactly.
was I gonna say? Oh, I got a haircut just for this.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm trying to grow my hair out. So, but I did get a trim because
Oh, why?
this little area right here gets like, I call them my wings.
Oh, do you? I'm
Wing.
I'm a very hairy person. Ba ba ba. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna take my wallet out of my pocket so it's not all weird. I'll put it all over here. It's my winning lottery ticket.
Woohoo!
No, I didn't. I didn't win.
$3.
I didn't win the lottery. Trust me. I wouldn't be here if I did. Did you really? I would be ecstatic if that happened to me.
So
Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, March 5th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We do begin each of our meetings with an invocation. And today we have Don Patton, who is a volunteer chaplain with our own El Paso County Sheriff's Office and a pastor of Grace Brethren Church locally here as well. If you would like to join us, please do so.
I'd like to start with a proverb from the King Solomon. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 20 says, "Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom for the future. The human mind may devise many plans, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will be established." Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come humbly to you. We need your instruction. We need your wisdom to solve the challenges before us. Help us. Give us wisdom for today and for the future. God, we want your plans to be established. Father, I thank you for each of the women and the men that serve in this county. Keep them in unity, protect their hearts and their health. Help them to be motivated with the heart of our Savior, the heart to serve others and to sacrifice in love. Give them unity in decisions as they are making these decisions before you. Bless them and their families, we pray in your name. Amen.
And on this election day, I'd like to do something a little bit different. Ask Commissioners Vanderwerf and Gonzalez, our former military members, to lead us in the pledge, please. Of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Thank you. Item number 3.
Item number 3 is staff emergency items, and I'm unaware of any staff emergency items today.
Item number 4.
Item number 4 is changes, postponements, and notice of the next meeting. I'm unaware of any changes or postponements to today's agenda, and the next meeting will be Tuesday, March 12th at 9:00 a.m.
Item number 5.
Item number 5 is the consent calendar consisting of items 5A through 5F2.
Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on any item on today's consent calendar? Hearing none in the room. Any online? Thank you. Commissioners, comments, questions, a motion?
I would move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
That has been moved and seconded. Any other comments? Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The consent calendar passes 5-0. Item number 6.
Item number 6 is comments by elected officials and commissioner liaison reports.
Commissioner Williams.
Well, good morning. I didn't expect to go first this morning. I expected an update from our county clerk and recorder, so
I think he's a little busy today.
just a little busy. I actually just would like to go over my calendar today. I encourage everybody to vote today, and remember, if you are now part of the largest party in El Paso County, which is the unaffiliated party, that you have 2 ballots. You may only vote 1, so please only vote 1 of those ballots. I also have this week, I have several meetings. On Thursday, I have the Statewide Transportation Advisory Commission. Actually, on Wednesday, I am working with the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments on an employee handbook overview. And then I also have Thursday evening is our caucuses. I would encourage you to attend those if you are Republican or Democrat. And then also Friday, we have the Regional 16 Opioid Council evaluation meetings. We had one of those yesterday. It was very long, but very informative. And then also I have a conflict with the community service, the Community Service Board Grant quarterly meeting, so I will not be attending that. So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
I guess I will have several comments this morning, and I think maybe some of my fellow commissioners will as well. And starting, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about legislation from the state, several different types of legislation, all bad. But I do want to start with the Supreme Court's 9-0 decision overturning the Colorado Supreme Court statement about whether or not a particular candidate can be on the ballot. I support that U.S. Supreme Court decision. The amazing thing to me is that most citizens in Colorado knew that what the Colorado Supreme Court did was wrong. And I just simply have to say it. It feels to me like the Colorado Supreme Court needs to go back to remedial constitutional training 101. I don't understand how they don't understand what the Constitution actually says. The only thing that I can think of is they just took the argument hook, line, and sinker with regard to one particular party. It seemed like they were trying to find a way to justify it in their statements about their ruling. And I am so glad it's overturned. And that I just remind the Colorado Supreme Court they should not be a partisan body. They should look only at the Constitution and nothing else. And I'm just flabbergasted by it. Okay, now going on to a few other things. I know that Mr. Dave Elliott is here, and he might bring this up a little bit, but House Bill 24-1235, and I see him shaking his head, so I know we will talk about it a little bit more. This is the bill being proposed in the state legislature that will be harmful to general aviation, will be harmful to the aviation industry in Colorado. It has drawn the attention of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, a national association with hundreds of thousands of members, and they have sent out an email asking pilots across Colorado and actually indeed across the United States to testify against this bill. It has a 50-cent per gallon tax against the only fuel available for piston engine aircraft at this point, the major fuel available. It has a whole bunch of other requirements that really are inappropriate. It's adding 2 additional people to the Aviation Board. It requires those 2 people to be non-pilots and living under the approach end or departure end of a commercial airport, and only allows those 2 people to be appointed from areas in Colorado that have a population density of 3,000 people per square mile, which means the only 2 appointments will come from the Denver area. There'll be no appointment from the Colorado Springs area or anywhere else in the state of Colorado. That just sounds like a setup to me with that. And then it offers a series of grants. The first one to airports to help them convert to no-lead fuel, except that no-lead fuel is intended on being mixed with low-lead fuel. The amount of investment in an airport is very, very low, maybe even zero. So I don't understand why that grant is in there. And then also grants provides grants to aircraft owners for modification of aircraft to use the no-lead fuel, but the no-lead fuel is designed to be used without modification to aircraft. So there are some real problems with this bill. Bottom line, though, it just feels like another tax and grab scheme at the 50 cents per gallon. That will cost aviation owners millions and millions of dollars. Okay, I know we'll talk about it a little bit more. The other set of pieces of legislation I want to talk about is, once again, the legislature is going through another series of constitutional violations for law-abiding gun owners. It is breathtaking, the number of pieces of legislation that are being introduced this cycle. Senate Bill 24-131, which would basically ban open and concealed carry virtually anywhere in the state. House Bill 24-1174, which would increase requirements for obtaining a concealed carry permit. House Bill 24-1310, which actually would harm the FASTER program to make our schools safer. House Bill 24-1349, which is an excise tax on firearms and ammunition. House Bill 24-1292, which is an assault weapons ban. Senate Bill 24003, which would allocate millions of dollars to an organ to a body of people that would go around the state trying to find violators and try to enforce gun policies that are already themselves unconstitutional. Senate Bill 24066 would require that all credit and debit card transactions between consumers and licensed firearms dealers be marked with a specific code and sent to the state government so that they will know who is buying ammunition and guns. And House Bill 241220, which would require all gun owners to maintain liability insurance, further increasing the unconstitutional financial burden on exercising our Second Amendment rights. This just goes on and on and on. And I know that we'll have a conversation amongst this board later on, and I will have an interest in asking this board to oppose these bills. But once again, a series of unconstitutional bills, and the end state of all of those is they'll just end up in litigation, spending millions of dollars. That litigation will take years and years, and then next cycle, the legislature will just do it again. So this is just something that is not acceptable and a problem for everybody. And the only people these bills are going to harm are law-abiding citizens. The people that are criminals that are out there are not going to follow any of these laws. So once again, it'll be a continued complete failure on all of these bills. So yes, am I fired up this morning a little bit? Yes, I am. Thank you very much. Now, just a little bit about my calendar. Stand by just for a second. So starting tomorrow, I will be going to the Arkansas River Basin Water Forum at Otero College in La Junta. I'll be there the entire day tomorrow and then most of the day on Thursday. And then on Friday, I will go to the State of the Peterson Air Force Base presentation. I'm looking forward to that. And I think that, and then on Monday, the 11th, we have the Retirement Board meeting, and I have the State Homeland Security Advisory Committee meeting that will be taking place at the, also on Monday morning. And those are my agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to also remind everybody to vote. It's how our voices are heard, and our voices should never be squashed, as we saw certain people try to attempt to do. And so I, too, also comment on the Supreme Court's decision yesterday, reversing the Colorado decision that was so obviously unconstitutional that it was overturned 9-0 unanimously. And I'll add here, Secretary of State Jena Griswold, in her official statements afterwards, stated that she was disappointed in the Supreme Court's decision. Ms. Griswold is supposed to be the most nonpartisan elected official in our state. Instead, she has spent months on national television attempting to disparage a candidate for president and Republicans in general, and continues to be wrong on judicial issues critical to our state's election processes. Through her actions, she continues to prove herself unfit for her current office because of her bias and her incompetence. Ms. Griswold, in her comments, of course, had to add more, and that at the end of the day, we are seeing a larger threat to democracy. Let's be very clear, the greatest threat to democracy in Colorado is Jena Griswold. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. Really appreciate a lot of the comments. So I'm going to try and not repeat a lot of those, though I think many very good ones today. I'm going to just start with the few things that are on my calendar this week. The Regional Water Authority, which I will be participating in tomorrow. Also tomorrow, I'm going to be participating in a tour of an organization called STEP Denver. It's an organization that deals with homelessness, and I'm really excited to do this. There are some conversations, I think, going on about STEP Denver potentially expanding into our area, and it's an organization that has received a lot of recognition for how effective they are, so I am pleased to be going up and participating in that. One of the city council members is also going to be participating in that tomorrow, so I just really look forward to learning about that organization and all the great work that they're doing and how we can truly have benefit from that private action. And they truly are private action, and don't just take a bunch of government money and then say they're doing private action. They are raising money from private sources to be able to complete that work. Tomorrow, I also will be meeting with several local water districts in order just to talk about sustainability moving forward. Really excited about that. That's an important issue to those in my district. Commissioner Williams mentioned the opioid council meeting. Yes, we did indeed have I think it ended up running 7 hours yesterday on that, and it's scheduled for an additional 6 on Friday. So that is keeping us busy, though also important work. I'm going to also be participating in some Civics B judging preparation, as I will be judging the Civics B on March 16th at the Broadmoor, so I'm really excited about that. And that is actually of great interest to me today as we talk about the Constitution and civics and how lacking that seems to be for some of our elected officials in this state. It seems to me that perhaps they should take a seat and watch the Civics Bee and watch some kids answer some constitutional questions, because it is absolutely shocking to continue to see those comments. I agree. When we had a 9-0 ruling, it's very difficult to look at a 9-0 unanimous ruling and then watch such out of touch statements from our Secretary of State. I think, to echo Commissioner Gonzalez's comments, to call others a threat to democracy when you are making statements such as have been made by our Secretary of State is quite frankly shocking. We know that we have checks and balances for a reason. We have the judicial system for a reason, and it's working in this case. It's just very shocking to see people completely dismiss that, to the extent that I've even seen some national voices talk about abolishing the Supreme Court. I cannot believe the lunacy that is coming out of the just radicals on this decision, but I am grateful that the Supreme Court has settled that and protected the voting rights of those here in Colorado. A couple other quick things. One is I wanted to note that the UN did an investigation and has verified the terrible crimes that happened as a result of Hamas terrorists in Israel, and I was grateful to see that. There are some who continue to deny the atrocities that happened there, and I'm grateful to see the UN step up and point out that those atrocities have been verified independently, and we need to continue to support Israel. I am shocked at the political gamesmanship that is happening currently, where we have the White House and others being soft on this issue, bending to fringe radical activists who want to call for a ceasefire and want to reverse the reality of the situation. And so I was glad to see that independent information come forward. I also, in the spirit of talking about civics and democracy and all those things in our nation, we have a great situation where we have 50 states that independently get to have a lot of different rules and laws. And that means we have 50 independent experiments going on all at once, and we can learn from each other. And one of the things that I think is important is to look at Oregon right now. Because I feel like Colorado has been following in the footsteps of Oregon when it comes to decriminalization of drug use. They have completely decriminalized, and they are now coming back and saying that was a huge mistake. The results of that experiment were not good. And so I really encourage folks to take a look at what's happening in Oregon right now. Let's be smart. Let's learn from some of those independent experiments, and let's not go down that path. Let's start looking for ways that we can improve the safety of our communities, not continue down the path that we've been on. And last but not least, I am going to just say thank you for highlighting all of the Second Amendment concerns coming through our legislature. And I want to highlight kind of the opposite sides of that, of things that we could be doing to increase public safety and not hurt law-abiding citizens, including making the penalties harsher for those criminals who are stealing the firearms of law-abiding citizens. But we didn't pass that. So, there are other things that we could be doing instead of violating the rights of law-abiding citizens, and yet the Democrats in our legislature refuse to do those things. But thank you for highlighting those things. I continue to be concerned about the direction of those items as well.
Well said to all of my colleagues, highlighting those things going on in our state, in our nation, and particularly here in our legislative season. I have several internal meetings all week, and then also some constituent meetings and some other outside organizational meetings, a couple of nonprofits, and then I will end my week with the state's Child Welfare Allocation Committee, and we will be taking a look at potential funding models and changes to that. We will not be voting at this particular meeting. We will take a couple of months to really take a look at the impacts of those different funding models, but looking forward to the CWAC. With that, I think we will, are there any other elected officials here to speak? We weren't sure if Mr. Schleicher was going to make it in or not. Okay. Item number 7.
Item number 7 is Community Service Organization Reports. 7A, Meadow Lake Airport Update, Dave Elliott, Airport Manager and MLAA Board of Directors President.
Good morning, Mr. Elliott.
Is there a way to point to on the screen? You guys can all see the screen, correct? Okay. What do I do to put the...
There we go.
Oh, okay, good. Good morning, commissioners, staff, and public, whoever's online. I regret that it's taken me so long to get here and do this. I've been here before you several times on other things, but this is the first opportunity that I've made to finally get down here and talk to you about Meadow Lake Airport and this community asset that we have here. So I promise to try and keep this in 15 minutes. I will attempt to do that. How do I go forward? Do I move something? Oops, there we go, good. Aviation and the FAA use a lot of acronyms. I will try to explain those before I use them. But if I see the quizzical looks on your faces, I know I need to go back and explain what something is. Generally, we think in aviation of 3 parts: aircraft, pilots, and airports. And the general public just thinks they're all, 3 broad things. But there's a lot of subparts to those. Which one did I push? There it is. So in general terms, in the aircraft world, we've got military and government that are flown by pilots that are trained in it, but don't necessarily have civilian licenses. They're not required to. We have commercial and business aircraft. General aviation is a broad category. The ones that are listed here in blue are the ones that are served at Meadow Lake Airport. And down at the bottom there's just kind of the low-end side of aviation that aren't done at Colorado Springs Airport because of the low performance of the airplanes would interfere with the high tempo of operations they have down there. So that's the role that we place. Approximately 12 to 14 years ago, the FAA did a study trying to figure out what should be their role in supporting general aviation, because that's the catch-all phrase after the airlines and corporate and commercial and business and stuff. So in 2012, they came out with a study called General Aviation, a National Asset. They identified approximately 19,000 landing facilities in the U.S. Those, a little over 3,300 are in the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems. Those are the ones that are supported by the FAA and funding. 378 primary airports, those are commercial service like Colorado Springs, Denver, Pueblo. The remainder, the 2,952, are general aviation. Mostly, those are publicly owned airports, city or county airports, or regional, or an airport authority. For a private airport to get into the system, they have to be designated as a reliever, meaning they serve a function in the national system. So there are 19 private-owned airports in the NIPIAS. This was in 2012. Today, there are around 50 or 60 in it, but those original 19 are the only ones that actually get FAA funding. Colorado also has an aviation system plan that's updated every 7 or 8 years. The recent version is 2020. Approximately 400 facilities in the in Colorado, which includes ranchers' landing strips and helipads at some of the hospitals. 74 public use airports, 66 are in the National Plan of Integrated Airports, 14 commercial service, 52 general aviation, 1 private, Meadow Lake. FLY is the designator for Meadow Lake, and I'll explain that in a second. That original FAA study tried to identify what does general aviation do, and they came up with these broad functions. Meadow Lake has done most of these at one time or another, with the exception of cargo and commercial service, and we don't do any space-type operations. And I discourage skydiving because it would be hazardous both for the skydivers and the traffic pattern, and we'll talk a little bit about the tempo of operations at Meadow Lake. Ironically, the House, U.S. House, last July, their version of the FAA Reauthorization Act had 7 pages of bullet points to enhance access to small-town America, to general aviation airports. We haven't seen the funding for that yet. That's the authorization and appropriations. We don't know what's going to come through to the Senate. But the idea was to increase air access to small-town America, which would really help Meadow Lake. This is what Meadow Lake looked like in 1986. There was actually a slide before this that somehow got dropped out. The airport started in 1965 when they were expanding the Colorado Springs Airport from the old terminal that's now on Peterson to the West Side Terminal. And the Experimental Aircraft Association, Chapter 72, had just formed a few years before that. They said, what about us? The airport said, we're doing the fast movers and the big stuff, you guys are on your own. So they came out to Everett Conover, who had just done the Meadow Lake Estates, and he had 6 or 8 or 10 sections of land out there. They used the next section to set up the Meadow Lake Airport. They drug the first runway. This runway for the aviators is only 4,300 feet long, 36 feet wide. It actually had mason jars with incandescent bulbs in for lights at night. You can see the runway went right up to Judge Orr Road. The story is that there was a guy in a Volkswagen there watching the airplanes, and the retired general and his Air Coupe came in and bounced off the roof of the Volkswagen and onto the runway. So when we built the real runway, we moved it south. The idea here, and this is really significant, Meadow Lake is set up as a through-the-fence operation. You buy your property, build your own hangar, build your own airplane. Membership of ownership of the properties makes you a member of the association. The board of directors of the association operates the runway complex. We're not a homeowners association, so we have no direct authority over the hangar complex. That's all private property rights. We operate the runway complex. And our policy is that we don't do anything on the airport, the runway complex, that would conflict with private property or private enterprise. So for instance, our fuel concession that we're going to talk about in a few minutes is run by 2 retired United pilots that they operate the fuel concession. And for them to switch would be to unleaded fuel or other sustainable aviation fuels is a significant financial investment. The airport was growing so quickly that by the late 1980s, they asked for reliever status to the FAA. That was granted in 89. 1990, 92, they expanded the airport, brought it up to FAA B1 standards, and I'll explain that in a minute. In 2003, the Colorado statutes were amended to include publicly owned commercial service and reliever airports, which added Meadow Lake to the mix. We bought up more land around the airport to provide a buffer. 2008, we got an FAA certified automatic weather observation system that required us to change our designator. We asked for MLA, and that was not available. So we thought about changing the name to Pikes Peak Regional, and they said, no, that's prior permission required in the military terms. So you got to come up with something else. They gave us a list. We went down through the list. FLY, we want to be Fly Colorado. With your permission, in 2010, we commissioned the new turf runway. That was an expansion of the general aviation overlay to the south. We got part of the confusion in the matters of state interest was the Denver departments, Department of Local Affairs and CDOT with the Division of Aeronautics, had 2 different definitions and regulations as to what goes into matters of state interest, the 1041. So as I'll talk about in just a second, When El Paso County started matters of state interest, the Appendix B to the Land Development Code, the initial draft said, okay, Colorado Springs is run by professionals, that'll be the standard. Any other airport that wants to do something else has to express why they are a deviation from the standard. But the airports are significantly different. The advisory circular for airport design establishes the standards that we are try to meet to. Meadow Lake is a B1 small. That means we're 91 to 121 knots for the approach speed of the airplanes. And our airplanes are small, 49-foot wingspan, 20-foot tail. Our runway is designed for 12,000 pounds. Where you can see Colorado Springs has much higher speed airplanes, 121 to 141 knots, and Group 4, that could be 107. It's a 747, a C5. We can't land those airplanes at Meadow Lake. That is an interesting dilemma, though, because I got a call last year from Dubai. An airplane over there wanted to bring what's called a Global Express. That's a large corporate jet into Meadow Lake. And he said, well, you got a 6,000-foot runway. Yes, Trenton, New Jersey has a 6,000-foot runway. I could land the Frontier Airbus on that 6,000, but I'd go about 100 feet at Meadow Lake before I sink through the asphalt. So we have to look at all those factors. The airports are not the same. They're designed for different things. We were looking at an Air Force pilot training program in December and trying to support them out of Meadow Lake. And we were progressing through that until we got to the multi-engine phase, and the Air Force had specified a Category E airplane. That's an approach speed of above 166 knots. That just wouldn't work safely at Meadow Lake. So we had to back off of that. Meadow Lake today is approximately 763 acres. 450 are through the fence. That's an FAA term that they don't like, meaning the Airport Operating Authority loses control over the private property. That's the hangar complex and 41 residential lots at Meadow Lake. We consider those as part of the airport because they all have airport access. We have 3 runways, 2 instrument approaches, and an instrument obstacle departure procedure now. 485 based airplanes. I do an inventory every December by N number and put that into the database. Of those, approximately 25% are home-built airplanes, and 125 are conventional, meaning tailwheel airplanes. And they're the ones that predominate, well, they use both runways, the main runway and the turf runway. Division of Aeronautics also does an economic impact study. In fact, we just kicked that off yesterday, as what is our impact on the local community? And these are the results from 2020. I don't know how they come up with the formulas of what the impact is, but that's the positive value added to the Falcon community in El Paso County. This is just a quick listing of 31 aviation organizations and businesses on the airport. I said all the hangars are privately owned. These are some of the organizations that have complexes. And we have some non-aviation businesses at the airport. Hangar square footage is very inexpensive. So they like renting and owning properties where they can do it. Our policy is, as long as that doesn't interfere with the airport operation, we have no right to complain about what's happening on private property. But if they start to park anywhere and are interfering with wingtip clearances and the operations of the airport, then we have to say something about it. As part of the NIPIAS, the National Plan of Integrated Airports, we have to have an FAA-approved master plan. Now, we're the ones that actually sign off on it, but Chapter 3 is the forecast demand that has to come from and be approved by the FAA staff. And Chapter 7 is the airport layout plan. And we'll talk about that some more in a minute. This is the cover sheet for the airport layout plan. This is the schematic of what the airport is and what we want it to become, or what it may become, that there's growth potential for the airport. The current airport has a main runway of 6,000 feet long, 60 feet wide, stressed for 12,500 pounds nominally. We can handle some larger airplanes occasionally. Our turf runway, the glider runway, but it's used by powered airplanes as well, is 5,000 feet by 200. We didn't do anything to improve that. Cut the grass, we filled in the coyote holes, we pulled out the cactus, and we marked it. The state actually gave us the funding for the environmental assessment on that, with the proviso that we leave it available for anybody to practice their off-airport, their backcountry operations. So the tailwheel airplanes can come down here and it rolls with the terrain and they get to see something that's not a nice, smooth golf course type runway, but it's safe to operate off of. We run this airport on an annual budget of about $220,000. Colorado Springs spends $45,000 a day. Most of this comes from member assessments. It was a little bit of a surprise this year with the taxes. We didn't know that the $30,000 deduction was coming in. So we actually planned a budget for $250,000 and we took about a $30,000 hit. That's okay, we'll still survive. We have miscellaneous revenues from fuel sales and mowing of the prairie and stuff of about $20,000. And our public grant, which I'll talk in a minute, generates another $70,000, and that goes to pay the commercial financing for the property. We do get a lot of FAA support. Every year, we're entitled to non-primary entitlement of $150,000 a year, which I can bank up to 4 years, which I just did the last 4 years to build an $800,000 snow removal building last year. Commissioner Vanderwerf had asked about the COVID grants, and we got approximately $151,000 out of that through the CARES, CRISA, and the ARPA grants. And 2 years ago, they did the bipartisan infrastructure law that made us eligible for $290,000 a year for each of the 5 years. Another portion of that is also GA terminals, or terminal modification. I think Colorado Springs just got $14 million, if I'm correct, for their terminal upgrade. And we've asked for $1 to $2 million for an actual terminal building, which we don't have. Some of the projects that we've done in 2021, we didn't have time to get a grant when Rudy Welsh passed away at American Aviation at 94. So I quickly arranged for a commercial loan, and we used some of our cash reserves to make the down payment. That's the part at the north end of the runway, right off of Judge Orr Road. And we brought the flight school into there to act as our fixed base operator to service that public ramp. Our snow removal equipment building was completed in November at around $850,000. We now have runway and identifier lights. There's strobe lights at each end of the runway so that they can pick it out with all of the housing around us and our instrument approaches. This year we'll be doing runway maintenance, a replacement well, because there's a well in the middle of the taxiway. They actually discovered that well or located the well in 1990 by witching, using a divining rod, and said this is where the water is. It was inconvenient because there's also a taxiway there. There's a lot of concern or misperception, I think, and that's why I'm glad I'm here, especially with the Planning Commission, that we're just a bunch of rich guys out there with our personal airplanes and we're trying to get public support to support our personal habit. The hangar complex is a private hangar complex, but the airport is a public use airport, identified as a regional airport. And what I'm really trying to push for the next 4 or 5 years with the board's consent, with their support, is on the left-hand side of the screen here is the current public grant, the Meadow Lake Flight Center, and the runway protection zone that we're working with CDOT and the Route 24 intersection realignment, which is this area. That's $1 million project we're doing in 2 years. It was set up, it was designed for little airplanes, but we're getting larger airplanes in there now. The wheels don't even fit on top of some of these ramps. So the entire grass area will be removed and asphalt put in so we can accommodate larger airplanes. And we're getting transient airplanes from all over the country. At the airport conference in January, they announced or approved a CDOT, Division of Aeronautics proposal to provide automated airport monitoring programs starting the 1st of June. So I'll know exactly how many takeoffs and landings we have at Meadow Lake a year from now. And I'll know the service area that we have airplanes coming in from. And with the Academy and our recreational, gateway to the Rockies here in Colorado Springs, I expect to see airplanes from all over the country servicing Meadow Lake. We're trying to set up a transient operation. We already have Children's Hospital air ambulance service coming in with their PC-12, a single-engine turboprop. And their operations managers asked me about expanding that to Guardian Flight and Eagle AirMed with their C-90 King Airs, or twin-engine airplanes, and the PC-12. And we can do that. We need to have a little bit more convenient area for them to work around, space-wise. And then the one we're really excited about is the Meadow Lake Soaring Center. High flight soaring has been there for a long time. Many of you know Mark Hyatt. Started at Falcon Aero Labs 7 years ago with 20 kids working around their homeschool schedule. This year he has over 1,000 kids in 20 locations around the state. He's out gathering money now to build an aviation center of excellence at Meadow Lake. They'll start with a hangar operation in a 2-story classroom and get the kids in their junior and high school years to actually come out and do the STEM side of their education in aviation. We have kids that are working on airplanes now, practice airplanes that aren't going to fly, that have never held a wrench. Dad doesn't do maintenance anymore. He takes the car to the computer shop and they recharge the batteries. This is the future layout plan for the airport that would bring us up to B2 specs. That's the minimum in the FAA world now. As I mentioned before, this is the largest, longest area on the airport where we start at the airport boundary, we come in 1,000 feet, and that's the length of the runway. Because under the new rules, the present rules, we have to own the runway protection zone, which we didn't have to use 20, 30 years ago. That's a $25 million project that would require discretionary funding from the FAA, and as a private airport, we're not currently eligible for that. So it's there if the need and the money arises at some time in the future. We talk a lot about Part 77 and the Colorado revised statute that says that local zoning and building authorities shall protect the airports in accordance with Part 77. So what we're looking at when I come down and complain, no, when I make my input to the high density surrounding developments around the airport, is that we'd really like to see a navigation easement that tells the people that you're going to be overflown by airplanes. You are subject to noise and vibration, and you waive the right to complain about it. I really don't have a problem with that. With noise, I get maybe one call a month in the summertime or every other month, and with some of the new technology, I can ask them roughly where do they live. I can look at FlightAware and see what airplane is there right now, and I can look at the flight track and I can tell them where that airplane came from. As an active flight instructor, I can tell them what the airplane is probably doing, and I can also tell them that that airplane's 3,000 feet over their home. That's not, they may consider that a problem, and I understand that, but there's nothing irrational or illegal about that. The state law says we have the right of flight everywhere, except restricted areas, except where the FAA can't tell us not to. I'm really on an outreach program this year because of what's going on up at Boulder and Jeffco. So we kick off our Young Eagles program this summer, this weekend. We fly 35 to 50 kids on the second Saturday of every month from March through November. The Pueblo East Broad Air Museum has their Wings and Wheels in April, and we're flying down to support them. They'll be up here for some seminars that we have on International Learn to Fly Day. We're having a public open house on the 1st of June. We're supporting in whatever way we can the Pikes Peak Regional Air Show, and then we're having a fly-in for other airplanes to come into Meadow Lake in September. Okay, challenges. House Bill 24-1235. That's why there's nobody here today, because they're all up in Denver. It's significant if it goes through. It actually wouldn't surprise me if it does go through. Hopefully amended if it goes through, but and that will result in lawsuits. It has more impacts than just what Commissioner Vanderwerf mentioned. For us, one of the other things is that all grant requests for the FAA would have to go through the state first. And they would get a cut on whether or not we can solicit or ask for FAA grants. It also would direct flight paths and patterns around airports. I know the FAA is going to challenge that one because it's a national airspace system. I don't know where they're going to go with this one. The University of North Dakota did switch their entire training fleet over to unleaded fuel, and 3 months later they had to go back. They had 14 engines destroyed in 3 months. We're not set up yet to burn unleaded fuel. There is a progressive program nationally to do that eventually, wisely and conservatively and when it makes sense on a maintenance, but to just legislate it just doesn't work. These are other things that I'm going to be working with Ms. Harrington about, and I haven't had a chance to talk to her about these yet, so I don't want to pull the rug out right now. But we're trying to be a good neighbor to the community and an asset to El Paso County. I live at the airport, fortunately. I have a good wife. Anytime you have opportunities and would like a tour of the airport, I'd love to show you around. Other than that, are there any questions that I can answer? That was a mouthful. Did I get
Commissioner
15
Vanderwerf.
minutes?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Dave, I appreciate your coming and providing an update to the Meadow Lake Airport. It's actually good to see some of the considerations that you're dealing with, and the growth of the airport and the value that it brings, the economic value side of this, which it does seem like House Bill 24-1235 seems to not care about. What this bill, for my fellow commissioners, what this bill is claiming to do is to accelerate the removal of lead from the by replacing the 100-octane low lead fuel with 100-octane no lead fuel. And the way the bill is kind of designed, it's supposedly supposed to accelerate the movement from that one fuel to the other. The problem is that fuel will only be made available when the FAA determines that it's safe for use, and they're still involved in testing of that fuel. There's things called supplemental type certificates that need to be issued for several airplanes. They've issued some of those, but a lot of different engine types they have not issued that for yet. This is a couple of years away, and then once they get to that approval, then the refinery industry will have to ramp up the mass production of the fuel. So this is several years out, and there's not a single thing the state legislature can do to accelerate this. This is being done at a national level. But I'd also like to bring up the fact that there were 4 studies done in the recent past, done by environmental groups, to see if there was detectable lead from aviation operations in the Denver area, and they detected none at all. So once again, this is a piece of legislation providing a solution in search of a problem where there's no problem. And the real goal of it is just to get more money with the 50-cent per gallon tax on fuel. And this so-called idea to accelerate this, they're going to end up in litigation. The FAA is going to sue them because there's another provision in this bill, and it's subject to different interpretation. But one way to interpret one of the provisions in this bill is that whatever gets set forth in House Bill 24-1235, should it be passed, regarding the requirements for airports in Colorado to convert over. They're going to require that the FAA grant program also be in compliance with that, and the FAA is going to sue them and tell them no. The FAA has a perspective that the airspace system is the exclusive purview and authority of the Federal Aviation Administration, and that no state can usurp it, and they will defend that. When I read this bill, it was obvious to me that the authors of this bill do not understand the aviation system in the United States. I mean, don't even remotely understand it. So this fuel is coming, and pilots across the country want this fuel. We're all actually interested in it, but we cannot do it. We cannot accelerate it until it's guaranteed that it's safe. And Dave, you mentioned that there are some instances, this usually happens, right? Some instances where engines are being ruined by this fuel. Yep. So there's a lot more engineering work that needs to be done on that. And it'll come, but not until it's safe.
When I started flying, it was in radial engines, so the old World War II vintage. In Navy flight training. We didn't get all the new stuff that the Air Force gets. But that was high octane fuel, and that was lead. At that time, we could not burn low lead fuel in those airplanes. But the engine's been modified, and now they could do low lead. And I'm sure that there will be an alternative progression to get into the unleaded fuel at a progressive logical state. The other big problem right now is the refineries aren't making it. First of all, it hasn't met the AMST standards, and there's no demand for it yet. Even if they legislate demand, they're looking at jet fuel and automobile gas, and the aviation fuel is way down here, and it's a minuscule port. They're not going to put a lot of money into something that's not yet going to meet the fair market tests. So, one other thing you had asked at the December Colorado Springs Airport Advisory Commission about why we aren't building GA hangars. And I'd just like to bring up one of the other battles that I have with the state government right now is the Universal Building Code, and apparently the plumbing control board has taken local discretion away from the county and regional building. So any variances to the International Plumbing Code, and that's on my list there, have to go to Denver, and they won't approve any variances. That means we have to have an ADA compliant bathroom in all new hangars. We don't have a central water system. We don't have a central sewage system. If you're going to put water in a hangar, that also means you have to have heat and insulation and electricity. And all the guy wanted to build was a shelter for his airplane. I'm going to be fighting this battle. I think that's an extreme overreach of the State Plumbing Control Board at the detriment of the public they're supposed to be serving. That's just not right.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. And you know what it seems like, if I'm understanding this correctly, the vast majority of hangars that house airplanes across the country, but certainly at the Colorado Springs Airport and at Meadow Lake, they're just a structure to provide environmental shelter for the airplane. There's no bathrooms in any of them. So that doesn't make any sense to require a bathroom when a bathroom's not required, and then to impose restrictions on what that bathroom can look like when nobody even has a bathroom.
And it has to be ADA compliant.
Yeah. So, and as a result, they're just turn them all down, of course.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. So I'm so glad that you're here today. There seem to be a lot of common themes around what happens when government decides to start legislating things and not letting the market work and all of those things. And we could talk about that all day long. However, just a couple of things. I just really appreciate you coming and doing this, keeping us informed on what's going at Meadow Lake. You know, before I ran for this office, I remember the master plan was happening, and I went to one of those listening sessions, and you know, it was asked what is unique in the Falcon community and what do we need to consider and preserve. And I put my hand in the air and said the Meadow Lake Airport, because of you know, being able to talk to you about that previously and understanding how important of an asset this is. So many people still do not know about the Meadow Lake Airport. I talk about it all the time to people, and I say, did you know there's an airport in Falcon? Do you know what they do out there? Do you know what the economic impact is? And so having you here and sharing this at our meeting, I think is very helpful. I hope that people are seeing it. It's a great way for us to point back to when people say they don't. In fact, over the summer when we were doing some work to try and figure out the kind of things that we needed in the community, the Colorado Springs Chamber was a part of some of those meetings, and when I mentioned Meadow Lake Airport and the programs like Falcon Aero Lab, they did not know about them, and yet we know that there are kids graduating from these programs that are becoming pilots that have all kinds of value to economic development in Colorado Springs, and there's still so many people who don't know about it, so I really thank you for that. I want to just take a moment because, you know, you talked about that 1041 last year, but I know that was a long time coming and a huge kind of step forward in my mind. I know that you were working on it for a long time, so I want to thank you for your diligence on that and protecting the airport, and also our planning staff on that. I'm pretty sure it was our county attorney and I who came out to the airport just a couple years ago and sat down and had more conversations about that. That's a huge win in my book. I'm really glad to see that finally come to fruition, so I just want to kind of mark that as in my mind, what is a big step forward, and I really appreciate that. So in regards to the specific legislation, and I'm glad that Commissioner Vanderwerf is obviously much more knowledgeable on this as a pilot than I am, but I'm really grateful that you continue to keep us in the know on that, particularly those studies. I read those studies as well. Thank you for sending them. And I do think that it's a very interesting thing, and it's something that we need to be aware of if we're going to be a partner in helping to protect the airport. So thank you for being here. This is all very important. I look forward to, I know Mark Hyatt, and I know he's working on that Aviation Center of Excellence. I think that there's a lot of potential there to be even more of an asset to our community, and I thank you for the work that you do.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 8.
Item number 8 is public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda. This is the public's opportunity to speak on an item that is not scheduled on today's agenda. And Madam Chair, we didn't have anyone sign in ahead of time to speak.
Okay, is there anyone in the room wishing to speak on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none in the room and none online. Item number 9.
Item number 9 is the called up consent calendar, and there are no items called up.
Item 10.
Item 10 is department and committee reports, non-action items, and there are none.
Item 11.
Item 11 is the addendum, and there is no addendum today.
Item 12.
Item 12 is executive session, and there is no request for executive session.
We are adjourned.